So I'm going to talk about something that I'm pretty passionate about, something that probably within the last couple of years, ever since I joined New York University Stern School of Business about 4 years ago and became director of their social entrepreneurship program. We're very fortunate at NYU to have actually not one social entrepreneurship program, but actually two social entrepreneurship programs. One actually out of our business school, and then one out of our School of Public Service. And so what's unique about it somewhat is that we do, in the business school, we do most of the classes on our social innovation and impact. We have about 21 courses now over the last 3 years that we've kind of built up around courses on social entrepreneurship and innovation. And then our Wagner School of Public Service has a lot of the funding for many of the students that come over to our business school and take many of our courses. And so they take the courses also with our business students who have kind of this social entrepreneurial mindset. They have an idea in terms of what are some social innovations that I may have kind of even for my own career or for what I want to do beyond business school. And so it's a nice cross-fertilization of ideas, both from kind of across the university. I know a lot of programs are trying to bridge entrepreneurship kind of across the university. So social entrepreneurship, I think, is kind of paving the way somewhat in doing that. What I'm going to talk about today is some very preliminary research and some preliminary work looking at impact investing, and impact investing around when a social entrepreneur has an idea and they're ready to launch. They put together their team, their proof of concept, and they're to the stage now, where am I going to find the funding? Where am I going to actually find the resources to be able to get this idea off the ground, and perhaps the social idea that can have really strong implications for the field and strong implications for alleviating, let's say, a society's pressing problem. And so impact investing is an area that certainly at NYU, pretty much known for, in the business school, known for its finance program, and really going in and looking at in terms of what we can actually do from a business perspective, but also looking at social entrepreneurship as one way, as a catalyst to look at new ideas and new innovations for the field. And when I talk about social entrepreneurship, there's, I think there's something like 25, 30 definitions of social entrepreneurship. And I like the one that actually Bill Drayton from Ashoka, the founder, the CEO of Ashoka, says that social entrepreneurship is really about coming up with innovative solutions and ideas for some of the world's most pressing problems. And when we look at social entrepreneurship and we look at social enterprise, especially more from a U.S. kind of centric U.S. view, we look at both nonprofits, but we also look at for-profit enterprises who are coming up with some of those solutions. And so, of course, a business school, got to have a business school joke here in terms of, you know, why should we be in the business of doing good? Why should we really care? Of course, we've shown doing good can bring success. I think we could do even better by injecting a little evil. And of course, down the street, or actually just really across the highway or across the hallway, certainly can see my colleagues in the finance department and economics department getting that. There is also, you know, I have a colleague, Jed Emerson, who's based in New York. He actually is an impact investor. And really, when you look at in the practitioner perspective in the last 20, 25 years, where social entrepreneurship has gone, you know, he is probably the one in terms of really leading kind of the movement and leading the idea around social innovation. And he says there's an idea that values are divided between the financial and the societal. But this is a fundamentally wrong way to view how we create value. Value is whole. The world is not divided into corporate bad guys and social heroes. And as much as we want to buy into everything that's, of course, that's happening with Occupy Wall Street and around the world and globally and all of that, I don't think there is so much. I think the idea of social entrepreneurship and the innovations that come from that bubble up from it, certainly kind of try to merge a lot of what's happening, try to rectify a lot of things that's happening in the corporate and the organizational world, and a lot what business solutions can lend a different kind of perspective in terms of solving some of community's social problems. So we look at social entrepreneurship in terms of, as I mentioned before, traditional nonprofits to traditional for-profits. And kind of looking in the middle of this continuum, both looking at social sustainability but also economic sustainability. And really looking in the middle in terms of organizations that are practicing, of course, social responsibility and becoming more of a socially responsible business by doing well, by doing good. But then on the innovation and the entrepreneurship side, really looking at how can we develop commercial methods that support even some of our very traditional social problems that we have out there. So anything in terms of alleviating poverty, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the different types of social sectors that we focus on and the different types of social problems in one moment here. But it really is that sustainability equilibrium, kind of finding the middle. And the middle ground, I think, is where the field is really going. And so many of our courses and so many of our programming and seminars and conferences and even our themes that we see in the research that's coming up in the area is really focused kind of in that center, in that social enterprise and the socially responsible business. We have at NYU Stern, we're now into I think our 10th annual social venture competition. And what's really exciting about it is that we have, over the past 10 years, given close to about $2 million away for social entrepreneurs that come through NYU Stern. And one of them actually is a company that won the competition actually my first year when I was in the program, took over as a directorship. And it's a company called Madagas, and they're based in Madagascar. And I think they're a great company in terms of finding that middle ground, that social enterprise that I was talking about before, and really in terms of blending both the social and economic and also environmental value of what they do. They're based in Madagascar. The idea came about two MBA students from Stern. They were in the Peace Corps for about 3 years in Madagascar, and came up with this idea about building a company, building a chocolate company in Madagascar, and basically doing everything from, they call it the bean to the bar, from everything, manufacturing, getting the cocoa, manufacturing the cocoa, putting it all together, basically. We're very proud of them. Last month they won, according to Fast Company, they're one of the 50 most innovative companies out there. And they're only really now 4 or 5 years old now. So great company in terms of they were in with Yahoo, with Amazon, with Google as one of the 50 most innovative companies. Being in Madagascar, I mean, in terms of everything that they do, going just beyond just the idea of fair trade, because they are and they are building an infrastructure directly within Madagascar, from everything from the manufacturing, but helping them build in terms of their infrastructure, helping them build their education system, helping them build buildings, roads, and things like that. Improvements kind of overall, kind of within many of the villages that they're in. They're starting to really start to scale now. And everything from, they do fair trade. Fair trade is good, but, they like to say that their model is better. So everything in terms of their cocoa is purchased from the farmers above the fair trade price, so above and beyond what's already being done by so many cocoa farmers in Africa, but who basically take the cocoa out and they manufacture it someplace else. Of course, Madagascar is staying right there. Chocolate is made locally. Wrappers are printed locally. If you get a chance and you just go up and you Google or you do a YouTube of Madagascar, you'll find a number of different stories of them actually, with the villagers within the society doing a lot of this work. Finished chocolate bars are shipped out of the country, and they're getting close to about, I think in sales already, probably about 3 million they'll do about this year. But really, the idea is that money is invested, and everything that they're doing, it's homegrown, it's there, it's within the community, so their entire value chain is actually helping out the economy, and also the kind of the social stability, economic and social stability of the individuals and of the villagers in Madagascar. So it's really exciting to see. And really everything in terms of the people and the planet, everything that they're doing, habitat conservation, the natural farming, creating biodiversity, and their philosophy, we win, Madagascar wins, and the world wins. And so this is just one example, I think, of a social enterprise, even before I start talking a little bit more about impact investing. They're at that point now of looking for expansion capital. And as a social enterprise, where are they going to find kind of that expansion capital so that they can go to other villages within Madagascar, but even maybe other countries within Africa, and kind of do the same thing in terms of really building up, helping them build their infrastructure, but using everything, all the resources basically there. Okay. We look at social entrepreneurship. Shakir Zara, had a piece a couple years ago in Strategic Entrepreneurship Journal, and talks about, why are so many people interested in social entrepreneurship? I could say this to my students, and they're already in social entrepreneurship and already thinking of ideas and everything like that. But, in terms of what's happening out there just globally and all the different changes that kind of are occurring, we see in terms of, we can go on and we can look on, let's say, a Gini index, and we can look at really the dispersion of wealth in terms of, especially in many of the poorest countries where the haves and have-nots. Poverty levels close to about over, I think, 1 billion people. What are we at, 9 billion now? I think it is. We've reached it overnight. But at least 1 billion live on, and I'll do this in US dollars, $1 a day. It's not very much at all. So very, very low levels of poverty. But when you think of all the things that happen in terms of when you do have low levels of poverty, poor infrastructure, poor educational levels, poor health care, a lot of different things, that come out of that. So we can see that. We can also see, just in terms of like technology, our awareness, just being on the internet, being on Google, being on YouTube, being on Facebook, just more of an awareness of what we can see out there going on, and the corruption and the poverty levels, again, that are happening in other countries, in ways that we can also think about how can we actually alleviate, some of those different things. What kind of ideas, what kind of innovations that we may already have that can be used to possibly, translate or scale to another region. And of course, the CSR movement, probably within the last, 15, 20 years, in terms of having ideas of how organizations, beyond just having an economic impact, of course, can also have a direct social impact in what they do in terms of creating jobs and creating wealth, bringing people out of poverty, and creating a new social and economic stability for them. And then, of course, market, institutional, and also, government failures too. That the idea that governments can't exactly do everything, and markets can't exactly do everything either. And maybe it takes both public and private partnerships together to come up with innovative solutions, some ideas that can be out there. So government failures, certainly in the U.S., when we look at everything happening with our educational system, look at everything happening with the health care. I could go on and on about many of the different things, certainly, that are are out there. Social entrepreneurship also, this is some work we did a couple of years ago, well, over a 2-year period, but now it's about a year and a half old. We did some work with McKinsey and the Foundation Center based in New York, and we wanted to look at in terms of how do we measure, how do we look at innovation, and how do we measure social impact. And I think that's a pretty hot topic, especially among practitioners, and especially among practitioners who are looking, foundations, governments, you know, they want to know, okay, how do I know that I'm really making a difference? How do I know that my theory of change, of what I'm trying to do, benefits others? How does it benefit individuals and families, communities and organizations and societies? And we came up with over about 100, we cataloged about 150 different approaches across all these different types of sectors here on how to measure impact. If you want to check it out, it's a tool set that's based on the Foundation Center. It's called Tracy, Tools, Resources for Assessing Social Impact. And all the different areas in terms of if you go in and you just want to know, okay, if I'm doing something around relief, so anything like an earthquake or a tsunami, you know, these are things that any type of ideas or innovations that surround that would be categorized in, in that area. In stabilization, basic needs, you know, soup kitchens, you know, even education, trying to get, you know, people to an acceptable standard of living. Also enrichment and quality, in increasing the quality of life. So healthcare, anything possibly also within the environment. And anything in transformation too as well. And probably you would see a lot of the kind of even some of the microfinance, even some of the clean technology kind of movement would also be categorized under transformation. So this was a way to kind of look at the different social sectors and try to kind of make a categorization of all the different ways that we can look at social entrepreneurship. Okay. We also can see in terms of the blending of both if you are a social enterprise, and I think this is very important in terms of looking at it in terms of social impact and the ways that we can measure it. But we blend both the financial side, of course, everything that we probably teach within our business schools, so the market potential and the rate of return, the competition, of course, the product and the service, the business model itself, the cash flow, and of course the management team and the people behind it. But then on the social side, it's like going an extra layer beyond and really talking about, okay, what is that impact that they're going to have? How does it relate directly to their mission? How do they align both their financial goals with their social goals? How do they measure? What are the metrics behind their impact, their growth, and also the different types of legal forms from a nonprofit for a for-profit that are available for financing and growing a social enterprise. So a lot of different areas there. And different areas in terms of mention the social sectors that can be out there, but also then kind of also what's currently happening. If we wanted to take even very specific areas here and put them actually back into kind of the 4 areas, you probably could. But even more specifically, if we looked at it in terms of the overall kind of visibility within the marketplace itself, and then how it's kind of matured kind of over time and become a lot more acceptable, probably within the last probably 10 to 15 years in social entrepreneurship. So everything from the fair trade, local food, green building, any green tech, clean tech, LOHAS, lifestyles for health and sustainability, electric cars could be actually in there, microfinance, clean tech, organic food, and what have you. And affordable housing certainly can be all the way almost down to even maturity and what's happening there. Yeah.
How this grant was created?
No, no. This was actually just based off of some work that the Monitor Institute was doing and some observations that kind of their thought leader group kind of put together in terms of what they're seeing when they're working with social enterprises. And so no, that wasn't, it wasn't even a...
Visibility, how it was measured?
By actually going out and looking at in terms of what was getting the most media, and also what was getting the most attention in terms of overall consulting.
Okay. And
So.
then the maturity is when these movements emerge?
Right, and when how long it's kind of been out there and talked about in the marketplace, too, as well. So, yeah, so, I mean, even some of the work, like there's been a lot probably because of Muhammad Yunus, probably within the last at least 10 years, on the whole microcredit, microfinance kind of movement. So they're looking at things that are kind of already been through the pipeline that have shown some type of acceptance already. And you could probably even say, I mean, I don't know why they put social enterprise here, because it's very much connected. A lot of these things are very connected. When we talk about lifestyles of health and sustainability, you know, organic food could go actually in there. In the green, all the green stuff certainly can be up there too as well. So, and that was kind of their, you know, some of it you could agree with, some of it could actually be. You could shift this actually probably from, you know, in another year, see microfinance probably over where community development is.
Yeah, but the thing is that there is going to be up and down and then stabilization.
Right, right. And then affordable housing always maybe coming back into play because we haven't really found the solutions basically for unaffordable housing. That hasn't. And so, yeah.
As an outsider when it comes to social entrepreneurship, can I just ask a question about sort of the basic motivation behind it? I mean, to what extent, as I mentioned, I'm an economist, so to what extent is social entrepreneurship driven by individuals, companies, owners that see this as a means to increase expected return or reduce return risk? I mean, if you some types of initiatives can, for example, be seen as an investment in goodwill in countries where you have operations and you can get more benevolent regulation of your business.
Right.
And to what extent does it tap into sort of a basic motivation in people of doing good, regardless of economic, financial returns? I mean, what are the sources?
I think there's a balance between, I think there is a lot of organizations and individuals that have a self-interest in being portrayed as their work doing good. And perhaps it is when you go down and you measure the impact that they're actually having. But the idea around also the social entrepreneurship on the other side, in terms of having sustainability, has to be kind of at the core. Financial sustainability has to be at the core. Because if you don't have that, then how can that innovation scale? But then how over time are you going to really have an impact and have that difference that you're going to see at a very broader level outside of individuals and families, but into society itself? So that sustainability on that side of having that economic kind of foundation and building a business model around the social mission, around the social goals, is central. I mean, that's what we talk about in the business school so much. You know, maybe down the hall, you know, across the way in the School of Public Service, it may be, I don't know, maybe a little bit different to some extent, but the philosophy from a business school perspective, and even from just overall sustainability, if we can't have that as a foundation, then there's no way that we're going to be able to have the impact, the desired impact that, and fulfill that social mission that we want to achieve.
Because, I mean, you mentioned some
Yeah.
initiatives, the difference between social entrepreneurship and, for example, you see these government development aid initiatives by Western governments and so on.
Yeah.
Is that you need private financial return for many of these initiatives in order for them to be sustainable. While when you look at development
Yeah.
aid, you know, it's basically
It's just giving.
government
It's
pouring in money, and you're
it's
not so
philanthropic.
concerned about,
Right.
returns.
Right. Right.
I mean, you are of course you would like to see some social returns, but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not so concerned about returns at the sort of private company level.
Yeah, absolutely do. And that's actually where impact investing is going to come into play. And they're going to want to look for not only that financial return, but that social return on investment too as well. And that's where the blending of where the impact investing directly comes into play, is how do we balance that, but how do we use the rigor of really some very solid financial principles with also then what we care about and what we believe in terms of what we're trying to achieve in terms of impact. Yeah. I'll get to maybe of that part. Come back with that question too as we kind of direct into some of the work. Yeah. Because it'll be a relatively new field. So we do talk about, so I'm gonna kind of do a segue into impact investing, and this is our traditional entrepreneurship risk and return, the very efficient, frontier that we talk about so much in the classroom and outside. And then this whole idea about the impact. How can we bring this third dimension in there where we balance it with both the risk and return? And we see a lot of organizations kind of just plodding along in terms of both the risk and return and then bringing in the impact. So a lot of new funds, both popping up from the venture capital side, from the angel side, and then also organizations, corporations actually jumping in and sponsoring new programs, new projects for social entrepreneurs. And so many of these you may have heard of before. New Skills Venture Fund, which is Silicon Valley-based. A number of the partners from Kleiner Perkins and also Sequoia got together. The whole idea was to build a fund. How can we help charter schools be more efficient, be more effective, and have the impact that we believe that they can, and how can we fund those and make sure that they're very transparent and accountable into what they do within their school systems. Acumen Fund, a nonprofit fund based mostly do a lot around water and agricultural and sustainable farming. And also healthcare too as well in India and also East Africa. Dannon, of course, with all their work in the association also with Muhammad Yunus and the work that they've kind of done in their Gurmeen creative labs. Many of you may have heard of that, some of that work, the incubators that they do around social entrepreneurship and innovation. I can talk more about that too later. And then also angel groups too as well that are Investor Circle, very much focused on, yes, we want to see some type of return, but we're also looking at that impact too, and some type of impact that we can look at. What are the costs? What are the benefits of doing that, of funding a social venture? So that is really kind of, as we move on, that is really in a lot of ways, this is where impact investing is going. I'll get further into it too as well. Just to kind of give you an idea where we have been on both looking at it in terms of funding social enterprises, everything from the very traditional venture philanthropy to the traditional grant making. Venture philanthropy, giving grants away, but also having some type of kind of involvement. It's kind of like a VC practice, giving the money, but then also perhaps taking a board seat or taking a very active kind of advisory role in the social enterprise. And then everything also for a for-profit social enterprise, venture capital, angel capital, and of course any types of loan, bank lending, certainly. But this is the very traditional way to kind of look at where social enterprises got maybe their initial funding, their seed funding, or also, and later on also even some of their expansion capital that they may have needed. And then this is a number of different things in terms of I just finished up a textbook on social entrepreneurship, and we had a chapter in there about funding social enterprises. And so a lot of the work in terms of these are questions that I even ask, our students that are in our social venture competition or within any of our classes. Questions that what is the most appropriate capital source? What are the things that I need to consider from a business perspective within my social innovation, within my social idea, and how do I get it launched to actually become a social enterprise? So, all the different things, what are the combination of financial, social and environmental value is being created? How can I quantify that in some way? Financial sustainability, is it a viable goal given the social environmental mission of the enterprise? It really should be in a lot of ways. Looking at the business model, what kind of revenues from one type of service, or even a tiered pricing model depending on kind of the affordability and the amount that individuals can pay at a certain level, and also the working capital needs, of course, that need in order to bridge funding from, let's say, from a launch to maybe a growth or a scaling issue that the social enterprise may be encountering. So good leads us into kind of impact investing. So again, it is about looking at how do we generate both social and environmental impacts in addition to also some type of financial return. And whole ideas around kind of what kind of all different types of capital can social enterprises tap into: equity, debt, working capital lines of credit, and also loan guarantees. Seen a lot of this in the microfinance very early on, but also community development finance, and a lot of work where impact investors are really making a big dent is also in clean technology too as well. At the end, I'll show you some different examples of a lot of different types of funds within social sectors that are hitting all of these different areas on impact investing. You can kind of see this is some of the growth rate, and these are a couple years old, so they may even be a little bit higher. But if we look at even the three buckets of community investment, microfinance, and also clean technology, just the growth rates in terms, especially with microfinance and also clean technology. And really the idea that, impact investing has the potential to reach, $500 billion. That's pretty good. And again, this is a similar work that was done by the Monitor Institute about the whole potential in terms of all the different types of, impact investing above and beyond, yes, the U.S. kind of philanthropic model that is out there. So different ways of how we can look at beyond just charitable donations, beyond just grants, just a whole combination of different financial and funding sources that may be out there. So it's good news for social entrepreneurs. We can also segment in terms of, Monitor also was looking at segments of impact investors. Those that are financially first investors that come in and they want they want to optimize their financial return, but also they're looking at, well, I'd like to have some type of social impact, versus the impact first investors who are looking at first the impact itself, the environmental or the social impact, and then some type of kind of financial. Maybe it's a below market rate return that they may be looking at, but there is some type of financial floor there. Okay, and so on the opposite ends, of course, you can see pure charity, philanthropy, and then also solely profit maximizing investing. So kind of just gives you, there's much more to that, but it's kind of gives you an idea of the different types of impact investors that may be out there, and the criteria that they may be looking for in deciding whether or not they invest within a social enterprise or not. And that actually leads into, when I was looking at this and saying, wow, you know, there's some different ways of how we can categorize these different types of investors. And what do they really care about? What motivates them basically to say, yes, I'm willing to give, let's say, you know, a certain amount of funding, perhaps to the social enterprise, based on, you know, what they're caring about. Do they care about the financial returns first, or do they care about the social returns first? Or is there some combination? And on top of that, what do they also, in terms of, look at just on a purely entrepreneurial base? Let's bring entrepreneurship back into the social entrepreneurship. So that's actually going to be the topic of some very, very preliminary work that we're doing. Again, impact investing, everything, may have mentioned kind of as a wrap up, but it is new impact related processes. You're looking at a strict investment policy discipline. You're looking at the impact, but you're also applying rigor of the investment tools. You're evaluating the impact too, so there is some accountability there. And you also have some type of financial kind of benchmark that you're looking at. Okay, so it's not one or the other. So impact investing, so what do they care about? And what really motivates? What's the most important criteria that motivates them basically to say, from a social impact investor perspective, should I invest in this social enterprise or not? So what are they trying to maximize? Social gains, financial returns, or both? And so this is some very, very, very early work. And in fact, it's actually, we're doing some pre-testing now, so you'll get actually some results from our pre-testing that we've been doing. So again, we'll look at everything that an investor may look at when they, let's say they look at an executive summary, they look at a business plan, they judge the quality of the team, they judge the quality of, you know, what's the market potential, what's the profitability, what's going to be the return, things like that. What's the growth in the marketplace of that opportunity? How rich is it going to actually be? How much is it going to be able to grow? So everything that an investor, a VC, or an angel would look at, plus also looking at from a mindset, if they do want to look for some type of social benefit, have some type of impact in terms of what they're doing with their money. So we're gonna look at impact investing here. So we do this in a way using discrete choice modeling, and Paul McFadden won actually a Nobel for this type of methodology. I'm not going to go a lot into it because it's, yeah, you can read and read and read about all the different the methodology, the way that it's operationalized. But basically, it's used to look at the different types of criteria. What are the most important criteria that someone would look at in terms of making a decision? And it's a way that the choice modeling is set up in such a way. Has anyone have done discrete choice modeling before? Eric, have you done discrete choice modeling? Okay, okay. Can I ask what kind of way have you done it, or what?
I've done binary product, multinomial logic.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Okay, we'll do multinomial. Okay. What were you studying, just offhand? Because
exit of manufacturing plants.
Okay. So whether or not
species decision and targeting.
Oh, great. Okay.
So, yeah,
okay.
Different applications.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, a lot of it is used in the consumer behavioral kind of mindset. What triggers someone actually to choose this over, you know, this one attribute or preference over another, and you can really kind of distill down into what is the most important criteria relative to everything, relative to others too as well. It's pretty powerful. Yeah. So we use it this way in terms of looking at how social entrepreneurs, or actually social investors, excuse me, will make those choices and will make those trade-offs about whether or not. And so it'll look at all the decision-making elements that go into, as long as you spell out the criteria of how to look at, an investment decision, and everything looking at real life, and also he likes to say the competitive scenarios too, pitting one qualifier against another. I'll get into an example here real soon that'll will show this. I go in, okay. And basically, if you want to know more about discrete choice modeling, these are some of the different types of steps that we will actually go through. And I'll walk you through actually how we did the experiment, how we set this up and everything like that. But basically, it's all about setting up, okay, what are the criteria that a social investor basically, when they do look at a social venture, what are all the different things, different facets, and important criteria that they think is that would motivate them basically to invest. And so we'll look at all the different types of variation of attributes. We'll go into that. And so the early testing that we did, some of the preliminary testing that we have done, and we use this for a student sample at the very beginning as a pilot, just to basically test the criteria that we have, but also our students within our business program, in a way, are impact investors. And I'll mention a little bit more about that. We have, at Stern, we have a student social venture fund, one of the first in its kind, basically, I think in the U.S., and maybe I'm not so sure about the rest of in Europe or what have you, but I've yet to run across actually a program, and it's a practicum. It's a course. Students take this at Stern. We have 300 students have a fund of 300,000. Yes, that they will invest in social enterprises, and it can be kind of across the board in terms of different types of social enterprises. For the last couple of years, it's been kind of more on the educational system within New York City and in the inner city. What it does is basically they are student fund managers, and many of the social enterprises, they come to NYU, they pitch their ideas, they pitch their business plans to the students. And as fund managers, they can decide whether or not, basically at the end of the day, to invest, and they make those investment decisions. So we'll do, and I'll take you really kind of shortly. This is kind of what they do. Students are selected as the fund managers. They develop the vision and the mission of the fund. Requests for proposals are then issued based on the fund's priorities and the goals. Applications then are brought in from social enterprises who are looking to be funded through our student fund managers. They go through an evaluation process. Semifinalists are chosen. Those semifinalists, then we actually do site visits conducted by the students themselves, the fund managers. And then they're actually going out, they do in-class interviews, kind of with the final cut. And then the final grantees, the money, is chosen by the class. And usually it's 2 or 3 social enterprises are funded by each semester's class. What's also unique about it is that, so not only are they actually being funded, but the previous years or the previous semesters class actually are consultants then directly within those social enterprises that we funded. So it's very kind of high impact, high involvement, engagement by the students, not only the money, but then also kind of the human capital and the talent to some of the social enterprises. So it just kind of gives you an idea. We have a fund mechanics team, we have a fund metrics team, communication stakeholder team, fundraising team, all around. You can see the various different areas from the values and the vision, the convening, the planning, the proposal, the pitches, and what have you. And then that's an example actually of the different types of assistance projects that we have done. So community fellowship, college and community fellowship, a print media, arts organization, and also international rescue committee. So kind of a little bit across the board. So going back to the impact investing, so our student fund managers, they were given actually these choice sets within discrete choice modeling. And just like investment managers, they were asked in terms of what are the things that are most important, whether or not you would invest in them or not. So we used a lot of entrepreneurial characteristics, things that are important to investment managers. So what's the rivalry, what's the management capability behind kind of the idea, behind the social enterprise, what stage of business is it in, what's their relationship with investors, do they have an exit strategy, what are their risk-return expectations, what kind of social impact do they have, scalability, we looked at, level of social innovation, and then also congruence with investment strategy. So it was an online questionnaire, basically, and you think, wow, you know, how do you know what's high versus low? You basically, on the online questionnaire, you scaled over high, and it will tell you what high meant, actually. So you can, when you go through all of that. And I'll show you also a little bit more description of how those were defined. So basically, 16 different choice sets were given to the students. So would you invest in venture A or venture B or neither? And then they'd press in. This is just the math behind discrete choice modeling if you really want to read more about it. But just really, you know, looking at the overall kind of attributes and really the relative importance of those attributes in comparison to all the other variables that we're looking at. So when they did go through in terms of how we looked at, we looked at a lot of entrepreneurship variables, mixed in also with a lot of the social impact and social drivers that we wanted to see. And based on different levels, and then also kind of the description is basically what they got when they actually they did the survey. So they knew kind of what, when we met high versus low, basically what that was all about. Okay. Methodology, just a multinomial logic model using LIMDIP. Kind of can see. And basically looking at kind of the utility function of each of the different types of attributes and kind of see which one in comparison relative to the others was the most important. And like anything else in a logic model, we can come down and see some of our results here. Everything was significant in terms of kind of overall impact except congruence with investment strategy. So everything, these actually did matter based on also kind of the different levels, but more importantly really when it comes down to it, the level of importance. The number one thing, the kind of the driving, attribute that led, our student fund managers basically to say, yes, we would invest in the social enterprise. Just not surprising here, coming down to management capability. The people behind the idea and whether or not they can actually be successful in terms of executing that social innovation. Risk return expectations, the level of social innovation and downward, you can kind of see. What we were hoping to see actually a little bit more was also on the social kind of impact area too. But
So,
it's kind of,
risk return expectation, is that private returns?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is has much higher importance than this. No, not much higher, but it's definitely, you find the social impact, which is sort of the social return.
Yeah. Right. Comes a little bit later. Yeah. In comparison, so at least social innovation was there.
Yeah.
I know in some ways. Yeah, we're kind of hoping that it would be a little bit more higher in terms of, and even scalability too, for that matter. But really, you're getting a lot of the same kind of entrepreneurship attributes that you would typically find in a.
So it's not that different
in investment. Not that much different, no.
It means
And
that any social entrepreneurship enterprise, when it gets to getting the money for the
yeah,
will face exactly the same challenges as any other
right.
enterprise, which means they need to be really competitive.
Yeah. And competitive in such a way, we can even map this out even a little bit different. In discrete choice model, we can do, you may have done this before, a value structure map where, again, the importance, we just saw, we saw the level of importance and everything like that. You can also do it in terms of what's the potential, using some of the numbers, what's the potential market impact that they would have. But then can we look at it as in terms of an overall opportunity? Does it add value basically to what's being said and what's being offered on the table? Or is it kind of like a must-have? It has to be there. And what we found was, when we mapped it out, was that, of course, management capability was like a must-have. And even risk-return expectations was a must-have, and having an exit strategy in a stage of business. But those that added a little bit more were some of the things, of course, that are a part of, social enterprise. So the innovation, the impact, some of the scalability. Although not as high as we really wanted to have it, but it was certainly on kind of more on the opportunity. Yeah.
That also relates to the bar chart you had previously.
Yeah.
I noticed that the level of social innovation as a factor score is fairly high. And then social impact was pretty low down. But
yeah.
Could that be interpreted, or did that have something to do with the time scale, that the investors were interested in investing in something that had that was socially innovative and not really expecting a social impact in the near term?
In the near term, right, exactly. Yeah, directly. Because, even a lot of times when we talk about impact, we think about it maybe 7, 10, 15 years down the road. And in the social entrepreneurship space, we always talk about outcomes. What are the things or the outputs, what are the things that are going to be the most immediate benefits, basically, to a community. And so...
But do you see more patience in the social entrepreneurship field compared with the commercial entrepreneurship?
Right, but what would be really interesting is if we went back to something like, like a Good Cap or an Acumen fund that was on the third frontier, was one of the examples, a nonprofit fund, where they are, that the idea of patient capital. Maybe they would actually have, if we segmented out some of these different types of investors, then we actually might see some true differences. And we don't have, what we have right now is just kind of a baseline. And doing this with our student fund managers was to see, do they understand some of this criteria? Does some of this criteria maybe have to be changed in such a way of how we define it? And then, what are the different types of impact investor segments that we can look at? And in fact, that kind of leads us into our second, what we really want to do with this research is actually get in with impact investors themselves, so go beyond just their student fund managers, and do some really healthy segmentation across different types of investors that may be financially first, social second, or social first, financially second, and then look at across also different types of sectors who have different types of time horizons in terms of where they're looking for their impact to happen. So a lot of it, too, we can look at it, if we look at social, environmental, and just the opportunity that is there to do some of this work, the social, environmental, and blended value themes. So everything from climate change, energy, water, community development, social enterprise, health and wellness, sustainable development, and education, and then all the different types of asset classes in terms of all the different types of capital that is available basically to these different types of sectors. There's a bunch out there. And even if we go down into, we look at all the different types of market rate and below market rate kind of mission related investments, all the different program areas and sectors that we have, from affordable housing. So these are just investment products that are out there, and they're funds, they have fund managers there that are looking, they're impact investors, looking at different, social enterprises to fund within each of those sectors. So there's an opportunity with all these different types of funds to basically go in and segment and look at kind of their profile, kind of over time. And these are just kind of like a sampling of some of the different types of funds that we can pull from. And so that is really kind of the next, really the next stage in terms of how we do that. I mean, it is so interesting that, and I wouldn't be surprised if we found still that management capability, and even teasing that apart even further was going to be still the number one maybe driving criteria. But based on some of the impact investors, we may see impact come up a little bit or even go down a little bit based on kind of their preference for both being financially or social, how they balance it basically, and their preference for risk too as well over time.
Just reflected on this table, you showed lots of possibilities to apply for funding, but
Yeah.
I guess it's differ very much across the countries, so that's
Yeah.
very much U.S. context and what's happening. I mean, Norway has different settings, and Russia is the third one, and the other countries.
Yeah.
So
We'd love to do something that is that would be across. It'd be very international, and different types of international funds
yeah, but
too as well.
yeah, I'm just thinking that if there are no, funds available or venture capitalists with this mindset available in
Yeah.
other countries, where are those enterprises going to get funding, and what impact does it have on their
Yeah.
development?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the funding, there are some here that will do some international. Probably not so much in maybe necessarily Norway, but there are, when you look at something like what Good Cap and what Acumen have done, very little in the U.S., but a lot in Africa and a lot in India, a little bit in China here and there, but if the funding isn't, I would imagine though you would have some venture capitalists and some angel groups here that do have, even though they maybe don't specifically say it within their portfolio, but there is some type of, what's going to be we're going to look at renewable energy, or we're going to look at an alternative energy, project. Why are we going to do it? Because we care about what's happening within the environment, But they specifically probably wouldn't come out and say, well, I'm a social impact investor. But as part of their portfolio, and maybe the way that they think is, maybe it's already kind of embedded, and maybe they've already made some investment decisions already kind of based on, I want some part of the entrepreneurs that I'm funding to have some type of benefit, to have some type of impact on what they're doing, just beyond just the economic. I don't know, I could be wrong. I don't know.
My sort of superficial impression is that, say, if you look at new clean alternative energy, those who invest or set up funds, what they would typically say that we think this is an exciting area with great growth potential. It's risky. It can do much good for society. So we think maybe that the government should also put
or subsidize because it's so expensive.
I don't think. I haven't heard yet anyone who says we want to do it to make a social impact, and we
they may not eventually.
We could have achieved higher returns in
right.
less risky returns in other areas.
Yeah, but so why are they interested in it in the first place? Even though they know they probably have to get government.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of growth opportunities.
Yeah.
These are growth investments, but risky. and as in a typical Norwegian Nordic fashion, they would also try to pull in the government to reduce risk and through subsidies, through government investment loans or regulation.
And it's probably the only way that they really perhaps can do it, because the capital requirements are so high, or tremendously high.
In some of these
and along with the risk, it's just the payoff isn't
I
worth
thought,
it.
Yeah, I thought your results, the survey you did, they seem sensible. If I understand the setting, I mean, management, quality of management came as a clear number one. You see the same thing with when I ask. I mean, this is just anecdotal evidence. When I ask people in private venture funds, what is the most important criterion for an investment? They say management quality. We study the management team first.
Right.
So that basically, here, as I understand, there's not going to be, when they invest, there's not going to be an outside rich uncle coming in here in the project in the sense of, in the meaning of government or someone else who are going to subsidize and so on. So you need to have something that is sustainable in a private economic sense in order to make it, to have a social impact.
Exactly.
You're not going to have a social impact.
Right.
The same thing,
You're not going to be able to scale either in terms of the growth that some of these investors want to see either. So, yeah, that's exactly right. And it's probably maybe more important because there's got to be a credibility and a believability factor that they can actually reach that level of taking that social innovation and having that long-lasting impact. Yeah.
When you talk about entrepreneurs, do you include entrepreneurs in established firms?
No, do not.
I was thinking about the funding issue. For one thing, they probably have the managerial capacity. Right. They may have the funding. They may even know something about the markets and so forth. Right. Yeah, it would be very interesting to see that. What would in corporations, how they're in this area, funding. For instance, there's a big issue whether or not oil companies should go into renewables. Yeah. I guess probably they won't. That's my guess, but they might for several reasons. It may actually mitigate risks. Having a greater portfolio of technologies and markets. Right. And also from wanting to improve their reputations.
And continually show that they're innovating too, in terms of what's on the next curve of innovation in terms of what will be out there. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the connection between innovation and returns, and it's not that obvious as we think. We always assume that innovation would lead to a greater profitability and success in terms of returns. And one of the recent studies on the Gazelle firms in Norway show that is perhaps not the case, but perhaps the innovation was measured in a way, but it's not. It's assumption that actually need to be tested. Whether or not, and the same the kind of corporate social responsibility. Is this the way that leads us to a better profitability within the enterprise? I doubt this actually. It's something in addition to perhaps.
I think with some, especially in the clean tech and the alternative kind of finance or alternative energy, is that so much of this is just so new. It's so radical in some ways on the innovation side that the idea to get a proof of concept and to get it really shown that it can be sustainable over time can really be a huge. The time horizon just can be very, very long. So the idea of a really radical innovation leading to, you know, growth that's 5, 6, 7 years down the road may never happen until, 15, 20 years down the road, until the market is educated and the technology is proven. And it's proven in such a way that it's also affordable too, and it's cost effective. And
So how innovative then as social entrepreneurs, they need
Yeah.
to get the funding to be
Yeah.
sustainable.
Right. I mean, there is, a lot of the projects that, are being funded aren't necessarily terribly radical, but more just that incremental innovation that's being transferred, let's say, from one region to the next, and that next region really needs it, and it's a pretty easy solution for the area, and it's also very affordable for the area too, and very cost effective too. Yeah, and it may not make a lot of money either, but it's alleviating maybe a problem, or it's one solution for one area that needs help. Yeah. Yeah. More on that with my experiences in India. Yeah. In Colombia.
The social impact that you're talking about, an economist's interpretation of it is that we are talking about externalities, positive externalities, or public goods, and an attribute of those is that you get some returns that cannot be appropriated by the individual, by the firm, and when you have negative externalities as pollution, then an economist would say you should tax it. If you have a positive externality, then you should provide subsidies.
Right.
Means government support of some kind.
Yeah.
And I don't see in your presentation, I didn't see much of attracting, providing arguments for government or others to come in to, because you have these. You obviously have these arguments. But is this sort of a premise for your program and for social entrepreneurship, that you're standing on your own feet and trying to realize projects, make them sustainable, without running around all the time and trying to attract external funding from governments?
Well, I think in terms of just what we've seen, kind of, and this is certainly more. I'm just going to say this from the U.S. perspective, in terms of government support and even foundational support. Probably within the last, let's say, 3 years, it's gone down quite a bit. In terms of, there hasn't just the funding levels have not been there, and they haven't been at the level where they can really help some of these projects and help them. It may be great for some, maybe, let's say, seed funding at the very beginning, but over time, in terms of as they're trying to create their business model, trying to get off the ground, that funding is not always going to be there. So giving them alternatives of how can we look at our own revenue base, our own profitability, and how do we use that basically to sustain ourselves.
What's the difference then of educating the students who are taking this social entrepreneurship program and other students who just want to be entrepreneurs?
Right. The difference between the social and just the regular entrepreneur.
Yeah. Is there any differences in trainings you suggest to them?
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a standard that they have to communicate beyond just kind of the economic, rationale of why they should pursue this opportunity. But they're coming in usually in the classroom with a social idea. They see a problem out there. They have an idea of, hey, this is the innovation that we want to build, we want to create. This is the business that we want to create. And it really does have, they believe it could have some type of difference, some type of impact, later on. And I think educating our social entrepreneurs not only on the economic and the business model side, but then also educating them in terms of how do they communicate that impact, how do they measure that impact, how do they know whether they should be scaling that impact, scaling it deep or scaling it wide, and how do they become just overall sustainable, again going back to kind of the economic and business kind of model itself. But I think a lot of it does come down to, in terms of, if they want to become, they want to be able to survive, is how do they look at, the ways that traditional entrepreneurship ways, that we look at opportunity and we look at our business model, but then also looking at how do we communicate, that social mission in such a way that we're talking about the impact that we'd like to have and we'd like to create. And how do we measure it? And that's huge. That's a pretty big hurdle, because people may not, see the social benefit right away. Most of them do, or they see the social benefit right away, but they don't see the kind of the economic model behind it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
To what extent have your students revealed their preference for social impact, social entrepreneurship before they enter the program through behavior?
Yeah.
Before, I mean, like, I think a couple of these people have been in the Peace Corps. I mean, to what extent have they been involved in activities like that, community, volunteer work?
Right,
so
right.
Are they different in that sense that you would see
in a traditional
entrepreneur business school students?
Well, our social enterprise association is almost twice as large as our entrepreneurship association. I don't know why. It really is. I'm surprised. I mean, it was that before I came to Stern. Maybe because they have better functions and seminars and all that. I don't know. But I think, NYU, because we have a couple social entrepreneurship programs, and I think, and the funding is available there through fellowships. I think we have I think we're a little bit of an outlier in the sense that we have students who, when they do look at MBA programs, they look at nonprofits and they look at social enterprise, social entrepreneurship, it has a pretty good reputation. So, they tend to come here maybe first for social entrepreneurship and then or a blending of both to some extent. A lot what I teach are traditional entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. What I see in my traditional entrepreneurship are those that actually want to be on the other side of the table. They want to be the VCs. They want to run their own hedge funds. They want to, they want to be their own consultants. What I see on the social entrepreneurship side are, here I got this idea. Here I've worked and I've done the Peace Corps. I've done this. I've done that. Or, and I've been worked for a nonprofit, seen how effective or ineffective they've been, and I want to come back and I want to use my, let's say, MBA or my MPA training basically to think about social innovation in a different way. And it's not across our courses, not every one of them wants to actually be, a lot of them go back into traditional kind of more organizations. They go into sustainability positions. They go into corporate social responsibility positions. So not everyone becomes like the social entrepreneur. So we try to give them multiple kind of opportunities across the board. But I think we're kind of a little bit of an outlier in terms of, but why they choose entrepreneurship over social entrepreneurship, just because of some of the classes and the different ways that, they're attracted because of the program that we have. I don't know. I wish I had a straight cut answer for you.
No,
Just saying the
I
numbers
just
and
wondered
everything.
if you had any data, on the students that
Yeah.
if you had made any analysis on the data that indicated that these students were different in terms of they had revealed their preferences in terms of behavior before they entered the program or the courses.
No, we haven't. It'd be great to start actually doing it at the very beginning of, even with their full-time MBA program, you know, right as they start the 2-year program, and then even the part-times too as well. Kind of see if there's a shift, are we making a difference even just in the mindset overall, or even in the kind of the social entrepreneurial self-efficacy, self-confidence area of what we're doing in the training that we have. We've yet to do that. We really have to do that. Yeah. So, yeah, that's good.
I wanted to ask,
Thank you.
on this conference that you guys
Yeah.
had, and what was the major tracks, or what?
Yeah, so we had probably the 3 major tracks that we had. We had 26 tracks altogether. So, you know, and that actually, we didn't determine, when we got the papers in, we just kind of really did a sort, basically, you know, that fits into that area, or how are some of the general themes. So the hottest areas right now are scaling social impact, measuring impact, and then social entrepreneurship education. How do we teach it? You know, what are the different ways of how we teach it? And everything from case examples of what's been used, what works, to experiential learning exercises, to projects actually in the field directly working with practitioners. So, but those were actually kind of the big, and governance was actually another pretty hot topic too as well. Governance and leadership within social enterprises and how that's structured. So, yeah, it was some pretty, we had, I think we had fun for a 3-day conference, and we had 12 plenary speakers and a couple workshops, and you should all come out next year. It was a good time. We had and a Broadway show, a party at the end with a band, a jazz band. What else did we have that was kind of a little bit different? No fights or anything like that. My center director always likes to have where every so often we have some people who have some opinions that we have to get the gloves out. That's okay. No blood.
Okay,
So,
thank you very
yeah.
much, Jill, and
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if you have more questions, or yeah.
No.
On the conceptual side, when explaining
Yeah.
what it is and how to promote it and so on,
Yeah.
it is really interested in peer review and the works of Sharma among you teachers or all the students.
So is there? I'm sorry.
Peer review by Carl Sharma from MIT.
Ah. Yeah.
Is that a part of your curriculum?
No, it's not. No, but it would be a nice contribution. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of interest in quest theory.
Right.
They are starting to teach it there, for instance.
Yeah. We had a couple of folks out from MIT in their incubation center too, actually, at the conference. It's kind of nice. But yeah, that would be. It seems like that would be a good contribution. Good. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Just thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah.